So, welcome to On the Entrepreneur's Journey. I'm Peter Santry, a former Wall Street exec turned leadership team coach. And this podcast is where we explore how entrepreneurs and executives build strong and scalable companies. Today's guest is Brandon Stonechock,
Stanchock.
CEO
That's
of
okay.
SWF Industrial, a 41-year-old leader in metal fabrication.
Yep.
Brandon's story is interesting. He went from a project manager building power plants to CEO of his father-in-law's company with absolutely zero experience in the steel business. And suddenly he was running an established company with a seasoned leadership team. So he was overcoming imposter syndrome and learning the ropes in real time, and fairly young when he did it. So we're going to delve into that, and we'll talk about what it took to earn the leadership team's trust, how to lead
Mm.
through uncertainty, and manage like a CEO instead of like the original founder. Plus, we'll dive into his current scaling challenges, the shifts in the labor market. Of course, with steel, you have to talk about tariffs and Brandon's vision of the future. So,
Mm.
welcome to the show, Brandon.
Thank you. You could have stopped at zero experience and then just stopped there and didn't have to put steel industry because it was pretty much that anyway. So thank
Yeah.
you. Glad to be here.
Well, that's so I have to ask you, you're working in a construction company, obviously, very technical power plant
Mm.
type stuff. You probably project management, have, 10 or 15 people work with you. So why did you, jump on this opportunity? Obviously, your father-in-law was sick and could no
Hmm.
longer run the company, but this was a sort of a mega leap for you, and you really never run anything beyond what you were doing at that moment. So why did you dive into the deep end and take the job?
Yeah. So just for context, I was traveling for 8 years for power plant construction. The last two of that 10 years with the previous company was management of about 15 people, Peter, probably. None of them actually worked in the same state as me. So I was really managing people all over the country, very much similar to what I was doing. Um, so it was a lot of, I was actually really comfortable with remote work before that was even a thing. So actually, I look back, I'm like, that was very helpful to a time period like right now.
Yeah.
So then that happened, and then we had the family conversation because obviously we had the sickness and had to run through a scenario of like succession planning. What are we going to do? There was lots of changes going on in the family at that time, and it took me 4 weeks to make the decision. I'm not a big risk taker, Peter, at all. So this was a pretty huge leap, as you said, for me to go from 20 to 124. Um, I've said this to many people. If I actually would have thought through what if I couldn't figure it out, I probably would have never done it. But luckily, my brain didn't go there because, like, you're talking about a family legacy, a person's legacy who ended up, you know, passing away not too long after. So, someone who built something since 1984 and and then 124 people involved, right, as a company, that just, if I would have thought through that, I would have definitely said no. But it took 4 weeks. So I talked to lots of people I trusted at my previous company. I talked to my dad quite a bit. And what really got me over the hump was seeing Al's concern, for what he pretty much put his heart and soul into for all of those years since 1984 and what was going to happen to that, which was his life. And then the other piece was my dad saying, in 5 years, if you don't do it, are you going to look back and think, what if I would have done it? And I was like, well, of course I am. And he goes, then there's your answer. He said, you can always go back to doing what you're doing because you're good at it and you already know you can. That's what kind of got me over the hump. But the other side of that scale, which luckily I didn't think about, like I just said, was what if it doesn't work? That would have been a disaster.
Right. Right. So you say, okay, for very good reasons, family, career opportunity, looking back, saying, I've got to take it. If I don't, I'll kick myself.
Yeah.
And and seeing the owner who obviously you were close to, his concern, knowing he had built something with up to 124 people, you couldn't leave that hanging high and dry, and so you
Correct.
waded in. And now you're sitting there and you're coming in as the guy, and there's an experienced leadership around you. So how did you win them over? Or what was what's the dynamic there? You're standing up, addressing them for the first time. What was that like? You have one hundredth of this of the experience that they do. How are you going to win them over? What was that? What was it first like when you did that?
So there was probably never any formal stand up because once again, I didn't know how that whole thing was supposed to work because I'd never been, it was technically VP position at that point in time because Al was still the president owner.
Mhm.
And so what was interesting is early on, because of the trust issues, like I couldn't have meetings before 9 o'clock before he got there, and I was going in at like 6. So it was really getting through. So when you have, because he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia, when you're going through that, you always already have some of that trust issue thing, and then you're bringing someone in to run what is your most important asset that it's the situation that caused it, not so much the choice. And so there was a lot of growing pains and trust pains through that. But what I did really was just tell everybody what I'm really terrible at. Like, I know that sounds crazy. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 8 Mile when Eminem raps at the very end, but he pretty much tells everything that people would make fun of him about. And I didn't consciously do this. I just went in and told them, like, I have no mechanical aptitude. Everything that can be done in this shop, and probably pretty much everything that you guys all and you gals are all technical with, I'm not. I don't know how to read drawings. I don't know how to use a tape measure. I can't weld anything. I know very little about metal, but this is what I am good at. And this is probably where I'll start because I feel like human nature, you always start with the path of least resistance when you're super scared. So you go back to what you know best and you just try to help there as much as you can until you learn the next thing and then you learn the next thing. So that's what I did. I focused on project management efficiency. I didn't know anything about business finance, but I knew how to make money at projects because that's what I did for 10 years. So my philosophy at that time, Peter, was if the projects make money, the company has to make money. That makes sense. That's what I'll
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
And what was interesting is very, founder syndrome. Not a lot of people there got to see everything because Al held a lot of stuff close to the chest. So we were all kind of figuring it out together. Um, there's a lot of things I really couldn't. Al would have good days and bad, and I'd try to, pull as much information out of him as possible. Luckily, Norma, our accountant who was with Al for 40 something years, she was still available and helping out. So she was really our rock for asking a ton of questions. And I walked into literally the greatest management team and overall team in general. Everyone was many, many years there. Our COO at the time, Brian, he just passed 41 years. So 7 years ago, he would have been, you know, 32 years in. So he was employee number 6. So like he was my go-to person for like, why is this and why is that? And what about this decision? And why is it? And then just the management team in general had been there for a really long time, which was extremely helpful. And I'm sure there was like WTF in their mind, but
right.
they weren't showing that, which was really appreciative and really kind of gave me the runway to figure things out because I realized how special that is, because it could have been why not me syndrome, and then
Yeah.
that would have been scary.
Yeah, I mean, two things which I think maybe were more lucky than good. Obviously, with a family business, you kind of, there's an assumption that it's a family business, and this is the type of thing where, the family is going to get probably is going to get to look at to run it from one hand. But also, I think it was kind of brilliant that you led with your weaknesses because that's disarming in some ways. People are when you lead with your vulnerabilities. Um, it takes a lot of courage to do that, especially in I would assume a fairly you know uh, male dominated industry like that. Some people don't, they become predators rather than accepting it. But in a way that just allowed you to sort of divide responsibilities as just naturally. I'm not good at this, and yet I am good at project management. I do like it. And I know how to make money, which is, very, a lot of people do not know how to do that. So you actually came in with some really appropriate background, it sounds like,
Mhm.
into that situation. And maybe with an older, more experienced team, sort of end of their career or latter parts, they were willing to accept and run with you a little bit. Is that possible?
Yeah, no, I think that's really dead on. I've been around a lot of craft people throughout the entire United States in my 8 years of travel, and that's union, non-union. I got to work with tons of both in many different scenarios and states, and a lot of the time I was the only full-time employee. So I was coming into new teams as an outsider pretty much every time I went on a new project. And the one thing you'll learn being in that industry is if you act like you're something you're not, it will get sniffed out very quickly.
Right.
So, in my role of what I was doing, which was really heavy, heavy project management, so I had to make sure that the budget was hit within a percentage and we delivered the product on time within a certain amount of days or percentage. So, I had to get a lot of answers about things I didn't know from people who I just met. That was pivotal to my role. So I had to really rely on other people, which means you have to go in, you have to gain respect, you have to gain trust, and show them that what you're trying to do for them is protect them on the project, and not so much against the customer, but for the customer so that there's clarity and transparency and they're not just getting yelled at all the time. So we really just did the same thing. It was what I did for 8 to 10 years before that was going into a new team, aligning myself with what I'm really good at, and then showing them that what I'm trying to do is just protect them from their day-to-day job and provide them with things that makes their job easier.
Wow. Wow. And again, that's probably serendipitous that you had that skill set, and it just so you had been through it before
Yeah.
several times because I can imagine. I mean, you were probably what, 32 at the time you did this transition occurred, or
I just passed 7.5 years, so yeah, it was about 33.
yeah, wow, okay. So your prior experience really did come into play here, and I didn't realize that. And then talk about how you approach the role. You mentioned founder syndrome, which is, how a CEO like you would manage versus how a founder does things. But how did you approach taking on the role versus that of your predecessor, Al?
I think all the things we just talked about actually were probably the biggest blessing for me. And what I mean by that is like when you have to rely on other people's expertise, you know that in most meetings that are technical, you're just going to sit and keep your mouth shut because you're not the smartest person in the room, and you're going to listen and you're probably going to ask really off the wall questions, which could either be really stupid or really smart just because you don't know, right? That sometimes that ignorance is like, oh, we didn't think about that because it's so in left field. And I didn't, because I know I couldn't do a lot, I felt like it really put my skills in avenues where I didn't overburden myself. I could really pick lanes and just keep chewing away at the things that I needed to learn. So I didn't try to wrap my arms around everything at once. And so, like, not I don't see myself as a true entrepreneur. I see myself as a kind of master manager. I think that's my superpower is really complex things, kind of simplifying, processing, SOPing them, and making them easier. Um, I don't know if I could build something from scratch. I say that a lot because I think that's very high risk tolerance, and that's just not my forte. But I just my previous president at the other company before I left, the lasting words he told me before I walked out was, "Don't try to change too much too quickly." He said, "You will see a lot, and you'll want to go and hunt that down and make alterations, but don't scare people with that." He said, "Take your time. It's going to take years, and just eat the elephant one bite at a time." So it's kind of what I did. So I focused on project management. And then the next piece for me was like our handbook was really role heavy. And then so I'd go to HR and I'd be like, well, why does this exist? Why does this exist? And it was just like, and it was just things that annoyed me. Like you could only take vacation in 4 hour blocks. And so I'd say to Molly, I have a meeting this afternoon. I have to go to an appointment at 12 to 1, but then I can't come back and go to my meeting. What am I supposed to do? And she's like, "Oh, I'm not sure." And I'm like, "Well, this is stupid." So
Yeah.
it was like just chipping through some of those legacy things because, and this is just my opinion, like I think some of that could have been around. There was a situation, someone made a decision that was very hurtful to the company. A rule was made to make sure that never happens again. So all 99% got hurt by the 1% of the person who actually screwed something up. That happens a lot. And
Yeah.
we just started pulling those threads and dissolving those rules and saying, if the 1% does something wrong, we'll talk to the 1%. We'll leave the 99% alone because they're doing mostly things right. One of my favorite sayings is, can we be adults about this? If we can, then we'll keep moving. If we can't, we got to make rules, and rules are dumb because we're adults. Let's stop doing that. That
Yeah.
kind of thing. So just chipped away. One of my favorite exercises I did when I got there was I walked around the entire shop and field, pretty much every employee. I had a spreadsheet open with everyone's name and my laptop, and I asked them, what's the three most annoying things about working here? And I just created a giant action item list, and we knocked off the low hanging fruit first to get a couple wins. So everybody knew we were listening. Some of them took like 5 years to knock off, like our point system. We had a point system for being late, not coming to work, blah, 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 blah. We just got rid of that.
Sort of a negative reinforcement loop. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and that came up a lot in those first couple of weeks when I did that exercise. Like, the point system sucks, the point system sucks, and I was like, I hear you. I can't get everybody on board yet. I realize some of this stuff may take me a long time, but I just kept open communication with it. Still chipping away. Not everybody's on board because I'm not just going to start making whole changes because I wasn't even sure I was correct.
Yeah. Well, it enabled you to understand your employees, meet them,
Mhm.
listen to them, and that's one of the great things about a great manager is if the people who report into you feel they're being listened to, even if you decide to do something against their wishes, the fact that they've had the audience and been able to weigh in and you've listened and considered, that's 95% of the battle, and it sounds like you did that well as well. So let's switch gears because obviously everything didn't go swimmingly.
Mm-mm.
Otherwise, I would call you a liar, but I'm not going to do that. But so there must have been some mistakes here because again, it was a big leap, and you probably made some mistakes. So, what was the biggest mistake as you made as you made that transition, and what did you learn from it?
I mean, it could be a whole host of things, from anything more bland to like not really understanding vision, mission, why they're important, why you have to tell people how to behave type things, and
Hmm.
evolving into that world. Even though I love culture, just didn't see why you have to tell people how to act all the time, or even giving the entire company this lofty, beautiful goal that we're going after as like a North Star, to
Hmm.
simple things like thinking I could create an incentive plan myself because it's just math. I can do it. Well, I'm an idiot, and it failed miserably. And I had to drop back and punt and do more something completely different. So, tell the company we're doing something, put it out there in about a month, realize it's failing, and go back to the entire company and saying, hey, by the way, this was a terrible idea.
Right.
So all of the things in between that, just, I've gotten pretty comfortable with failing or trying stuff and looking stupid. That doesn't bother me too much because I'm just trying to keep pushing that envelope. I actually had that conversation with Brian, our COO, today because I did his review, and he said, just keep coming up with weird ideas. He said, because you're like that, those are so helpful, even though we may go, not sure about that one, right? But like you try some, they don't work out, and you try other ones and they're a huge success. So just having some of that background of just chipping away at things. But yeah, tons of mistakes. Yelling, simple one like yelling. I yelled 4 times at people at SWF. I remember all 4 times, and all 4 of those were completely avoidable. And so, um, never have to yell at people. I don't have to
Mhm.
yell anymore. But young, coming up through, being frustrated with probably the way I was handling things or not knowing how to handle them because I was ignorant maybe to the right process or leadership style or how to lead correctly in all aspects. So I look back on those, probably my saddest times. I really wish I would have done those. Not anything, and some of those people still exist, and I had to go back and apologize. But like, it's just like control your emotions. Like, it's the one thing
Yeah.
you can control. So calm down.
So did the team give you the stay weird hat? Is that why you have the stay weird hat? Because
No, I made these. This is an AI design that I sent to Etsy and got made. So they're the only hats that exist like this in the world.
okay, all right, but it was probably prompted by your team saying
Yeah.
so. So let's fast forward today because I find your industry to be fascinating.
Mm.
You're in the nexus of tariffs, reshoring, remnants of the Inflation Reduction Act, and infrastructure build. You're just kind of at the crossroads of all of it. You're domestic. I'm sure you have a lot of foreign competitors. I just and then of course there's the labor market and finding skilled labor. So there's just a ton of things that are going on here. So can you talk? Let's start with labor because manufacturing, welding, all this stuff that we were losing trades and now it sounds like the tide is starting to turn. As at least that's what you were telling me in your conversation and that with others. Can you tell me how the labor environment has evolved for a company like yours that requires skilled manual labor?
Yeah. I would say it has evolved probably for the last, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 years. And the easiest way I can put it is the I would say the younger adults coming into the career from the trade schools, where that's where mostly like we'll have connections with those schools to try to get new employees. And they would be coming in, and it was kind of like, well, this is my last opportunity to get a job and get paid. Like that's kind of what the attitude was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where now it's this is my career choice. It's something I love to do. I love building things. And this is the career I want to do. And just that mindset shift is a huge difference on how people show up to want to learn. Because our senior fabricators, I know I'm biased, but like they can build anything. If it's made out of metal and it's not in a catalog, we're building it. So that means you have to be really creative and artistic. And mind you, we're taking flat sheets of metal or I-beam or channel or whatever and turning them into things that make food. Like
Right.
that is what we're doing. It's insanity. And so if you think about that, that all has to go in a creative way and through all the forms of fabrication or welding or anything to build what we're doing. And it's a lot of very, very smart, creative, artistic people with a passion for just building things with their hands. It's truly incredible. And I think people are starting to see like the minimalist mentality, I believe, is taking over to not go into huge debts of loans through college avenues
Hmm.
if it doesn't fit you. So I don't think it was like these men, this mentality always existed. It was just I feel pushed down because it wasn't a real option. And the language now in schools is different. And even with parents, because parents were afraid, they want their kids to have a great career. So I think we've gotten to the point where it's like, oh, you mean they can make enough money to buy their own house and get a car and have a family and all that kind of stuff? It's not unsafe. People care about people staying safe. It's not dirty. We have all the respirators and PAPR systems to keep people safe and healthy, and you can do what you love by building things and still live a long and happy life. So, I think a lot of that narrative has changed and the attitude has changed. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a long time until we ever get to the levels of what we lost for the last maybe 20 years. I think it's going to have to take a pretty crazy idea to get all the work done in the sense of maybe collaboration amongst competitors. That's at least that's my view. I think we're all going to have to lock arms, maybe like we didn't in the 90s and 80s because we didn't have to and we're probably too afraid. And now it's going to be like, hey, we can't fit it in. Anybody got room because we're just going to have to really be smart about how we're feeding all the employees who really can do this amazing stuff. I just want everybody who wants to do this work to have enough hours that they want to live their lives very comfortably. That's it. So if that means sharing a bunch of work because there's going to be a ton of it, I'm game.
Yeah. And then it sounds like too that you have people that want to be doing what they're doing, love doing it, train for it, younger. How has that affected your retention rates and in your labor force?
Yeah, so I'm big on attrition rates and retention, our retention bars, period. So our attrition rate last year was 12. Industry average is about 37, and we have I think it's at 8.5 years. Our overall kind of retention bar and normal construction is about 4, so we're over double that as well. Now, some of that, obviously, we have really long-standing employees that are going to retire from the company, so that's really obviously helping that graph. But once people come in, you can do a lot of extra things as well as paying them well, which is kind of like that's what you should do. But we provide a lot of extracurriculars that I feel really support not only them, but their families. Like we have free mental health for everyone in the company, plus 7 of their family members, as long as they're over the age of 18, which is completely free for as many sessions and for as long as they want, and up to 7 of their family members, for a pretty nominal cost. So we just got really tricky with our insurance and thought outside the box and worked with a company who's willing to kind of flex that with us to chip away money over here to pay for something like that over here. Because construction and suicide rates is actually a pretty gross statistic. So we wanted to get to the bottom of that and have outlets for not only the employees, but if employees have family members that are struggling, they're still carrying that baggage in with them. So wanted to help give them a resource that could possibly help solve that problem. So things like that. We run our company book club. Anytime we get invited to, perfect example, we got invited to a golf outing from a local vendor, and we just send that out to the entire company. Anybody who can sign up, and then we'll do like a random name generator. So it doesn't just stay with management. It can be anyone. Don't really care. I don't feel like people do enough of that. That is a really simple way to make people super happy is send other people besides your management team to these things. It's a free day out, pay for the day. They can go have fun, represent the company, be adults, and it's really cool. So yeah.
A lot of sort of non-monetary compensation and benefits and thoughtfulness going into that, which is obviously affecting your retention. Okay, so look, we're in this current environment, and tariffs are everywhere now. I would assume you're a beneficiary of it, but tell me about what that has done to the competitive landscape and to your cost. I mean, obviously, you've got steel is probably your highest cost away from labor, and it's got to affect you there. But tell me how it's affected the landscape.
We have seen some opportunity. I would say that companies are calling into saying, "Hey, I'd like to get this built in the US." I wouldn't say it's like flipped a switch like maybe some people might think it has. Steel cost has gone up because there's less competition. Sorry to tell you, but American steel, guess what? They make us pay higher prices as Americans. That's happening. It's unfortunate. If they held their rates,
Well,
they
let
would
the
still make
president
more
hear
money.
that. Right, right.
Well, it is what it is,
Yeah,
and
it is. Yeah,
it's unfortunate, and but that's what happens when you have monopolies of certain industries. So all that cost is going up. We haven't really seen any issues with, I would say, like steel shortages or material shortage or anything so that's been good. Um, but yeah, we've seen some opportunity. We're pretty busy right now, but I would say it's not with customers we didn't already have. So I just think the market in general is really good right now. But we have had a few opportunities that have come kind of from either Canada or Mexico to say, "Hey, we'd like to explore this." I wouldn't say they've turned into actual purchase orders yet, but yeah, uh, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. Well, I also think you're in the sweet spot when I look at your end markets and I see, data centers and I see, just pharma, food. A
Yep.
lot of these areas are waste, medical pharma, all that stuff, food. It's a pretty good, and just robotics and mechanizing things. You're in a lot of trends that are favorable, that have tailwinds. So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised you're busy. Well, that's fantastic. So, with that tailwind, guiding you, what do you look ahead and say, where do you want this company to be in 3 years? Do you have the opportunity to grow it substantially? What are you looking at doing, Brandon? What's your vision?
Yeah, I mean, space is always the issue in manufacturing. Even if you own 100 buildings, you're still going to run out of room. Like that is our kryptonite in manufacturing is always space. So there's always that option in the sense of growing floor space and expanding in that. Obviously, you take into consideration the labor market, but I feel like we're pretty good at hiring. We spent a lot of time on social media showing what it looks like to work for us. interviewing our employees, having fun with that kind of thing. I think that's the biggest. If I could give manufacturing in general a tip there, just show people what it's like to work in your actual company. And that means like you don't have to like walk around the shop and show the walls, but they'll be able to look in the background when you're talking to employees and things like that, and just get a general feel for that, because I think it's one of the scariest things for people moving jobs. So if you're struggling with that, show people what it's like. Unless it's terrible, then I'm not sure how to help you. uh, but yeah, anything in that space, new markets, we're obviously going after, even maybe new certifications. Like just recently, we got AISC certified because we were seeing some of our heavy structural stuff was requiring that type of welding qualification. So we went out and got that. So there's other certifications we don't have that could be interesting and help us get into new markets as well. So there's a couple things. Yeah, and it's really just growth, and not kind of growth for growth's sake, but growth for potential's sake in my eyes. My two core values as a human being are humor and potential. So I just want to make sure that our really, really awesome employees have the opportunities with us and what don't need to go to other places. So if you're going to do that, you're going to have to provide them new opportunities and whatever that looks like. So
Yeah, I mean that's people wonder why, and there's a lot of people who are against growth, but if you don't grow, you don't retain your best players because they're not going to see the opportunities, and the whole system starts to break down if you can't create them a better life, or show them a path to a better life. And so it sounds like that's what you're doing, is looking for ways to do that. And it sounds like you might be a little space constrained, though. That sounds like
yeah,
the biggest constraint.
yeah, and I fight against my risk and my risk little thing on my shoulder that says like, oh my god, this is going to be scary. But I make sure to. That's why I love doing podcasts, Peter, because I've had so many conversations with really smart people in sectors that I've actually used them with the company to say, hey, I have this thing. Perfect example, financial modeling. Like before we would go do something, I want to financial model it out so my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed to say, okay, I'm now comfortable. My risk monster is now lowered. I feel good. Let's move forward. But like I couldn't do that myself. And so I think one thing you'll see with podcasting is you're going to meet amazing people and you're going to be like, hey, I knew how to call. I knew how I can call this person. And even if it's not that person, they'll point me in the direction of someone who could possibly help me. It's brilliant. There's so many smart, amazing people out there that never get a chance to be on podcasts, which is why I think it's so wonderful.
Yeah. Anything out there that you could see derailing sort of this good environment for you?
Um, I think it's hopefully going to continue. We have the other thing we have is such a diverse customer base, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's a blessing because you never like we have a very low percentage of like no customers, like 50% of us. Like, and we used to have a little bit of that. We got away from that, luckily. So then, like, if you have a down year with somebody, it's okay. You get filled in with someone else. So it
Right.
really helps kind of smooth out your peaks and valleys. But the downside of that is like trying to SOP and process all these different products is really difficult. So you got to have really great processes that are kind of broad that say, okay, we've got to capture all of the potential issues that we may have, because we don't really have product lines. We build maybe 20 of the same thing and then we'll build something completely different. So, some of the reason I think we have such a high retention because we have people who want to be tested mentally on how to build stuff, and some of those people who I've had actual conversations around this who are really, really good at what they do, they say, I love this place because if I get tired of something in 1 month, the next month I'm going to be building something I've never built before, and I love that challenge. And I was like, got it.
Right, right. And so I'm sure adaptability has to be one of your core values, because if you're not able to move with that and you just want to create the same thing and bang it out every day, you're not going to be very
Yeah,
comfortable for long, it sounds like.
yeah.
Good, good. Well, that's very, very enlightening, and I'd love to hear some of the things that are going on. It's good to hear that labor is people are coming back looking at manufacturing jobs. You're able to source young people from and
Hmm.
retain them. I think that's very heartening for the country. Anyway, so I appreciate your time. I know you're a podcaster too, and so tell us a little bit about that side of you, because not many CEOs are wielding the podcast. What is your podcast? What's it about?
Yeah, so it's called Just Some BS. And it's really, I just talk to people about their passions. So it could be anything from Disney World to fractional CFOs. I don't really care. I didn't niche down, which Peter probably hurts my growth. And I knowingly did that because I want to run out of guests when I want to run out of guests, not because I can't find any. So I also do some solo pods in there. Like I actually just did a solo pod yesterday because I had a podcast cancel on Monday. So I just filled in this week with myself. I had a topic I wanted to talk about. And so I kind of just riffed for a 30 minutes on a subject I felt passionate about. And so it's kind of fun to just be able to talk about stuff like that. And, even if no one's listening, I enjoy that. I've done a lot of YouTubing as well. So I have all the gear. So I was like, okay, why not try it? I do think if you're an executive, and the only reason I started podcasting, Peter, was I read a LinkedIn post that said, "Are you an executive who wants more customers and more employees?" And I said, yes, that is something. I want both of those. They
Yeah.
said, you should start a podcast. And then I read the rest of it, and it was really around relatability. Uh, People could go listen to literally 80 hours of me talking to other people. You can probably figure out what kind of leader I am pretty quickly. You can't hide for an hour, and you can't hide 80 times and pretend to be someone else. At least I don't feel you can. I'm just not that person anyway. So I think it's very easy for people to look for a new job and say, let me go find a place. Okay, let me go find out what their leadership looks like. And then they could just go find me. I've actually had that scenario. We hired a new person. And within the first 2 weeks, either Brian or I go out and talk to them about our culture, behaviors, what we expect within the industry. And I went out and talked to this specific person. And they said, I already know what you guys expect. I've been watching your stuff for a year. And I said, it's working. I said, that is the greatest news I've ever heard. I actually thanked him. Because he knew expectations before he even came in.
So I mean, I never even thought of it, that you're able to be yourself, be vulnerable. People will hear your conversations. They'll know who you are. It takes a lot of the guesswork. They'll be comfortable with you, or they won't. And everyone knows it's not really the productivity that causes people to wash out. It's the culture, and it's what you represent. And if people are not aligned with that, they generally don't last long in organizations. So it's a good advertisement to be out there and sort of talking and being yourself. Well, that's very interesting to learn. And I'm on the early parts of my journey. So Brandon, if somebody wants to find out more about you, obviously they can watch Just Some BS, which is your podcast, or
Yep.
how else can they get a hold of you and learn more um, about your company?
Yeah, so swfindustrial.com. We have an amazing website. You can also go on there. If you put in just your contact info, you can actually tour our entire shop. We did like a 3D Google Maps that walked through on 2 different weekends. You can walk through both shops to see if maybe you have a project. A lot of customers do that just to see if they can fit something in, if the size will fit. And they'll look at our cranes, our crane capacity, make sure that they can lift what they're looking for. So you can check all that out. And then check me. You can just, if you want to get a hold of me, LinkedIn's probably the best way. It is my business card. I don't believe in physical business cards anymore. I'd rather just show you a QR code and you can go right to my LinkedIn.
Right. Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I really enjoyed it. And until next time, we will see you all later. Thanks. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.